We've got a lot of top tier guys returning to the top 30 after their bye weeks are over. So now let's get into the top 30 wide receiver rankings for week 9. And I'm doing everything I can to get us ready for week 9 fantasy football. So go down there, drop a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. Before I get into it, thank you guys for 25,000 subscribers. It's a big day. None of this is possible without all of you guys. Now getting into our first tier right here, the way I see this tier is very simple. All of these guys have a 30-plus point ceiling and a really high floor to go with it. With Jamar Chase at number 1 and Puka at number 2, if you just look at it from a fantasy points per game space, these guys are top tier. I mean, Jamar Chase, it is just crazy. I saw something that he's averaging he's on pace for like 300 targets from Joe Flacco if Joe Flacco was his quarterback the entire season. It's absolutely insane and that much more disgraceful of how I put him at 20 at one point or another, if you can believe that. Jamar Chase versus Chicago, that matchup doesn't scare me, mostly because no matchup scares me when you're getting 20 targets a game. It's outrageous. Puka Nacua versus the New Orleans Saints in his first game back does make me a little curious of how healthy is he going to be. I mean, he had to get helped off the field. I do remember watching that, thinking he'll probably miss a couple games. It just kind of got lucky that the bye week lined up after the week that he originally got injured and missed a game. So it's like, maybe he comes back fully healthy. I kind of wonder, though. So I've got him at number 2, even though he's been the better wide receiver from a fantasy points per game perspective. Rashee Rice at 3 and Amon-Ra St. Brown's at 4. Rashee Rice at Buffalo, you just better get used to it. I mean, this is a guy who is the centerpiece of the offense. Not just the passing game, he's the centerpiece of the offense now. And he's going to Buffalo in a high-flying matchup. There's no way he's not a tier 1 wide receiver. I mean, you already look at the targets that he's getting and the points per game that he's gotten through 2 weeks. It's actually pretty crazy. But Rashee Rice, realistically, none of this is going away. To me, the most surprising thing on the game the other night was watching him throw the ball in the guy's face, realizing he probably hasn't grown up that much, but they can't afford to not use the guy. Amon-Ra St. Brown at number 4 versus the Minnesota Vikings. Matchup doesn't matter. We all know this. Detroit's offense is so efficient. They're coming off a bye week. That's usually a good thing for teams. So I would imagine that Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to continue his streak of getting in the end zone and just being their top target. Amon-Ra St. Brown is just never much of an argument and being in tier 1. And then Jackson Smith-Njigba at 5 to round out this tier. Going to Washington to take on the Commanders. I actually think the Washington defense a little bit tougher than some people think. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. I mean, Jackson Smith-Njigba is actually getting really good quarterback play. Nobody really wants to talk about it. Darnold has played really good football this year. And that's kind of the reason why I don't really get scared off by any matchup, because JSN is so clearly the team's wide receiver 1. And Darnold's playing good football this year. So JSN easily inside of tier 1 at number 5. Dropping down to our next tier, I know a lot of people probably won't like that CeeDee Lamb is at 6 in the second tier, and George Pickens is also right behind him at 7. Now, the way I look at this is, of course, CeeDee Lamb's elite. This is not a slight to CeeDee Lamb whatsoever. I've always liked him, always wanted to draft him a lot higher than Justin Jefferson this year. But if you look at it, and all the games they've been together, Pickens has been a lot of times the better fantasy option. And he's not getting out-targeted like crazy over CeeDee Lamb. That's actually kind of not the way it's gone. So CeeDee Lamb and Pickens, they're kind of on the same level as each other right now. And I think that CeeDee is still the better player and probably has the higher ceiling if everything hits. But you can't rule out Pickens, because Pickens has been a guy that's getting a lot of targets, and a lot of them are down the field, and he's executing on all of them. I mean, him and Dak have shown really good chemistry already, and of course CeeDee Lamb has the better chemistry, but I do think that these two are very much back-to-back to each other at this point, and neither of them can separate because they're both high upside type of guys. And then Michael Pittman at 8 to round out this tier at Pittsburgh. I think the way you can look at this is a couple different things. Number 1, his target share is actually starting to go back up. And number 2, I've been saying this for months. This guy's on an extremely efficient offense. You cannot overlook the fact that they're basically scoring on every possession, and he's a big part of that. And then number 3, the Pittsburgh Steelers defense is absolutely horrifically bad. I mean, the Dallas Cowboys passing defense, looks at the Steelers and is like, you guys suck. That's how bad the Steelers' passing defense is. Give me the matchup. Give me the better player on the more efficient offense. Dropping down to our next tier, Drake London is at 9, and Jalen Waddle's at 10. So Drake London, obviously, there's a lot going on here. I mean, he's questionable. He may not return to this game because he was kind of a late addition to the injury report. So that would indicate that he probably got injured during practice this week. Not a good thing. So he may or may not play this game. If he plays this game, I'm also going to have this projection based on the fact that Michael Penix comes back. Because we all know, if you watched Kirk Cousins, that's not going to happen. Like, Kirk Cousins is not good. He needs Penix, and Penix isn't even, I don't know if he's that good. But going to New England, obviously, if Penix and him are there, the potential and the upside, it's always there, but they are so freaking inconsistent. I can't rank him much higher than this. And then Waddle at 10. The way I think about Waddle, guys, is you need to start valuing him as a high-end wide receiver too. I have this team nailed. Anytime they go out of their element into bad weather, they're not a good football team. But they're going into a home game. Their weather's on their side, so they will do well. So I don't have a problem in their weather and in their current situation on Thursday night. Thursday night defenses already aren't good, and it's the Ravens defense. So I do think that Waddle actually has another good ceiling game this week of 20 to 25 points. Justin Jefferson is at 11, and Rome Odunze is at 12. Yeah, at this point, Waddle has the higher ceiling. Like, seriously, guys, I made a trade on my wife's team. She had Justin Jefferson, and I was like, we got to get rid of him. Like, he's your first round pick, and he's capped at like 15 fantasy points per game. It's just not good enough. And it's not his problem, right? I mean, JJ is obviously a fantastic player, but the problem is this quarterback situation, it's not getting any better. It's a disaster this year. And JJ McCarthy looks like he's going to return. If you think that's a good thing, I guarantee you, like, people forgot how bad J.J. McCarthy was watching Carson Wentz. He's not good either. It's going to be bad. So at Detroit, I mean, you'd want them to put up points in this matchup, but the reality is, I think they're a jumbled mess right now, and based on target share alone, is the only reason he's at 11. And Rome Odunze's at 12. At Cincinnati, I mean, the guy has been mostly good. And a couple of bad games, but I doubled down on him this past week when I called him a buy low trade target, and I also said I'm going to play him very confidently. He gets over 100 yards this past week against the Baltimore Ravens, and it's another soft matchup at Cincinnati. So I'm in on Rome Odunze once again. I think that the Chicago Bears offense probably has a get-right game, and Rome Odunze's a big part of that this week. Ladd McConkey at 13, and Nico Collins is at 14 to round out this tier. So Ladd McConkey, at this point, has separated from the rest of the Chargers receivers to me. Because if you look at Keenan, the target share is there. Like, every single week, he gets a lot of targets, particularly on third downs and fourth downs whenever Justin Herbert is in trouble. But a lot of it is short distance, and he sometimes is not as good after the catch. Ladd McConkey, on the other hand, very consistent work over the last month. And particularly all season long, he's been their wide receiver one. If you look at fsroundup.com, and what I call bottom line metrics, he's always been their wide receiver one. But it's different because he is the most explosive athlete on the offense with the most consistent target share. That's the reason he's separated from me. So against Tennessee, a matchup that doesn't matter to me, they will have this window where they can execute because they're going to be up by so many points by the time the fourth quarter hits. It's not going to matter late, but I think Ladd McConkey is still the best option in this high-flying offense. Nico Collins at 14. I'm assuming he returns, and now he does not have to deal with Pat Surtain. The best cover corner in the league is out for like the next 6 to 8 weeks with a pec injury. That's a bummer for me because I like watching good defensive play. But the reality is Nico Collins should be in better position this week. He'll be taking on Riley Moss, who is a good corner, but not as good as Surtain. The reality is why he's not higher, because he's given me no reason to put him higher. Nico Collins has had not a great season, and the reality is that this offense, yes, he is their number one, but it's not working because every defense he plays knows it. So he gets double, triple covered all the time. So Nico Collins, I do still believe in the big playability and the ability for CJ to hit him on those, but I don't believe in him to be a massive volume guy because while he does get plenty of targets, a lot of them are shut down. But I am kind of curious to see what the rest of the community thinks about my ranking of Nico in particular because he was a first round pick for a lot of people too. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to fsroundup.com, type in Nico Collins, go to chat, then go to start a poll for week 9. And I'm going to add Ladd McConkey to this, and I want to see what you think. Go vote on this poll right here because I want to know what the percentage of people is that would play Ladd over Nico or Nico over Ladd. So go to fsroundup.com, go vote on this poll. It's completely free to vote, completely free to start your own start-sit poll as well and get results from the community in live time. Go vote on other polls, and if you want to see access to my top 250 rankings on a weekly basis, that is the premium subscription that is only $6 a month. That dropped from $8.88 a month last week. So it is a massive value you're going to get for the top 250 rankings on a weekly basis. Additionally, you'll also get the automatic waiver wire tool, which is winning people leagues this year. And additionally, you're getting the comparison features and the league sync up features. We're talking about league winning features for $6 a month. You need to jump on this price. Dropping down to our next tier. Courtland Sutton is at 15 and DK Metcalf is at 16. So I made the active decision to put Courtland Sutton a tier below those guys because I will say this, the matchup is really a problem. Like last week, he had a really good matchup. He didn't take advantage, and that was a bummer because Courtland Sutton dropped a pass over the middle of the field that was probably a 25-yard gain. And it wasn't going to be like a massive week for him either way, but it would have been better. And Courtland Sutton usually doesn't drop those passes. So my problem is now that he gets a much tougher matchup. He's got Derek Stingley for the majority of this game in all likelihood. And Houston, they proved it last week. That's a tough place to play, and they have a really good defense. So Sutton, yes, I do still think is the wide receiver one on an ascending offense that's really starting to click, but I do worry about this particular matchup for Sutton. DK Metcalf at 16 versus the Indianapolis Colts. The matchup is already not that great. I mean, Indy's defense has done really well with Lou Anarumo as that defensive coordinator, and DK, I've been saying this for a long time. This chemistry between him and Rodgers is not that good. I mean, Rodgers and him, like DK Metcalf should have had a massive touchdown last week, and he dropped it. He's been dropping a ton of passes this year. He does not have the short hands that George Pickens does, who just got ousted in Pittsburgh. DK, yes, the big play upside is always there. He can catch a ball in the middle of the field and take it 45 yards for a house call. That's always going to be there, but the chemistry between him and Rodgers is off. There's a lack of trust from Rodgers to him, and he's not catching every pass that comes to him. So at best, he's a high-end wide receiver too, and that's how I've got him ranked. Devontae Adams is at 17, and Zay Flowers is at 18 to round out this tier. Devontae Adams versus New Orleans, the matchup couldn't be better, right? The matchup is not the problem. The problem really comes down to, if you've looked at the last several weeks, him and Matt Stafford kind of have a disconnect. Now, I know the last time they played was when Puka was out, and Devontae Adams had a hat trick in that game. Like, I understand. The guy is great in the red zone, and that's what keeps him a high upside play. But with the return of Puka, he'll get less work. And additionally, any target that's really gone over the middle of the field to him, not the greatest chemistry between him and Matt Stafford. So, of course, I like Devontae, but I do say there is a cap on him because I don't see massive upside from him on a weekly basis. Zay Flowers is at 18 at the Miami Dolphins. Great matchup on Thursday night, and Lamar Jackson returns. That's why Zay is ranked higher. And it's not because the floor is higher. The floor, I've been highlighting this for a month now, is actually lower with Lamar Jackson because he does go away from him and more towards the tight ends. And I guarantee you, Isaiah likely is going to be involved moving forward. But the ceiling is ultimately higher. He can get in the end zone with Lamar Jackson. He can get the ball down the field more with Lamar Jackson. The ceiling is higher, and I like the matchup. Therefore, Zay Flowers is higher in the rankings. Dropping down to our next tier, Brian Thomas Jr. is at 19, and Ted McMillan is at 20. Now, with Brian Thomas Jr., we still don't know enough about the injury as of the time of this filming, so maybe he plays, maybe he doesn't. I guarantee you the bye week definitely gave him good time to rest. The matchup is good against the Raiders, and I will say this, one thing that did give me a vote of confidence for him was the fact that the coach, like Liam Cohen, basically addressing trade rumors for Brian Thomas Jr. was like, we're just not doing that. Like, this guy is a really good player. We've got a lot of confidence with him after the bye week. So they're going to continue to give them the ball. The problem is, will he be able to execute? Because Brian Thomas Jr. has been a drop factory this year. So I do think that you've got to mitigate risk by putting him here at 19. But at the same time, I do acknowledge the ceiling is definitely there. Ted McMillan at 20 at Green Bay. Matchup is not particularly ideal. And who knows if it's going to be Andy Dalton or Bryce Young. Now, I think that his ceiling is similar either way you go, because last week he ended up being a pretty good fantasy play with Andy Dalton in a blowout. I think it could be a similar type of game script. They get blown out by Green Bay in this game. But Ted McMillan, at the end of the day, is clearly their wide receiver one. It just is, regardless of quarterback play, he's got a cap ceiling because he's not in the end zone that much. Chris Olave is at 21, and Deebo Samuel is at 22. Chris Olave goes to the Los Angeles Rams. Matchup is not particularly great, but I will say the one weakness of the Rams defense this year has been in the passing game. Now, they traded for a corner. Maybe that makes a difference, but Olave, either way, guys, very consistent target. Like, this guy has been extraordinarily consistent with his targets, and I will say Rashid Shaheed is definitely a good option as well. But so far this year, the consistency, more so in fantasy, has lied with Chris Olave. So I do think that Chris Olave is a really solid play this week. Deebo Samuel, 22. I don't know, guys. I mean, this situation in Washington is getting ugly fast. I mean, Terry McLaurin's probably going to be out again. He re-injured that groin injury, so not a good situation. I think that Deebo, in theory, could have a good day against Seattle, but that is a really tough matchup. And if it's Marcus Mariota again, that ceiling is way down. But again, I did say earlier in the week, I'm going to rank players based on how I think Jaden Daniels will play. So I do think Jaden plays and Deebo's ceiling is going to be higher, but I will say this, Deebo does not look like the same guy he did in the first month of the season. Wan'Dale Robinson's at 23 to round out this tier versus San Francisco 49ers. I think Wan'Dale had a little bit of a lower game this past week, in part because Darius Slayton will get downfield work. So I am a little worried about that. But I will say this, Wan'Dale has clearly showed the most chemistry with Jackson Dart. I'm just at a place now where I'm like, without Cam Scatterboo, what's their energy and confidence level like? Because he was such a massive fueler for that team. And without him, I do worry about this team as a whole. And this matchup versus San Fran, it's a matchup that can be taken advantage of. So that's why Wan'Dale's in the top 25. But I will say I'm a little bit more worried about Wan'Dale than I was before Darius Slayton returned to the lineup. Dropping down to our next tier, Keenan Allen is at 24, and Travis Hunter is at 25. Makes his illustrious return. And I said this earlier with Keenan when it regarded to Ladd McConkey. Keenan Allen, the problem is not targets. Like, every single week, he's going to get targeted. Because the reality is that Justin Herbert, anytime he's in a crisis mode, like if he's got a rush in his face, he's evading pressure, or it's 3rd and short or 4th and short, that's his go-to guy. And Keenan has been that. And I do think that, again, there is this small window in this game for them to be able to maximize pass catching options in fantasy football. So I don't think his ceiling is that high this week. And I do think that Ladd has separated from him, but I do think he's still good enough in this matchup to have a top 30 week. Travis Hunter at 25 at Las Vegas Raiders this week. Again, matchup is fantastic with this guy. And if you buy into last week, he should be able to get on the field as a receiver more and become more important. They pissed around with this one for so long. It's really irritating. But I will say this, if you held on to Travis Hunter for as long as I did in my personal leagues, you may start to see the payoff come through. After the bye week, they may have had a wake-up call and said to themselves, why are we messing around with this? He should be a top target in this offense, especially the way Brian Thomas Jr. has been playing. So the way I see Travis this week is extremely high ceiling. 30-plus point ceiling, but a very low floor because we don't know what they're going to do with him this week yet. So against the Raiders, have him inside the top 25, but I can't put him much higher than this. Romeo Doubs at 26, and Quentin Johnston is at 27. Now, Romeo Doubs is taking on the Panthers. Great matchup. Christian Watson coming back definitely affected him. Now, I will say this. I still think if you look at the overall impact on the season so far, Romeo Doubs has been the team's wide receiver one. Like, I do think that's not very much in question. But I will say again, his upside, I think, is a little bit capped with Christian Watson's return. But against the Panthers, the way they're starting to fire on all cylinders in Green Bay's offense, particularly in the passing game, I do think it's a good matchup for Romeo Doubs. Quentin Johnston, everybody wanted to rage drop him after the Thursday night performance. I came on here live after the game and I said, don't do it. Quentin Johnston is going to have more good weeks. Could be this week against Tennessee, or he might have a lower game. What I do know is this. He came back from an injury the previous week before the Thursday night game, and then came off a short week and played on Thursday night. And I don't think he was healthy in either of those games. So I do think that's a contributing factor to why he's had less work. So you give him basically a mini bye week to come off of. I think we'll see more QJ involvement this week, and I'll take him inside the top 30. Jameson Williams at 28 to round out this tier, and he's taking on the Minnesota Vikings at home. I think Jameson Williams, I just think of it like this. If I line him up against Marvin Harrison Jr. or Jordan Addison with J.J. McCarthy coming back, I'm going to take J-Mo. And I get it. Jameson Williams has been a landmine to play this year. And I'm not even saying you need to play J-Mo. He's definitely a flexible option, not even a wide receiver too, because his involvement varies week to week. But I do think that his ceiling as a player is just too high to ignore on one of the best offenses in the league. That's just the way I think about this one. Bottom line, end of story. Dropping down to our last tier. Rashid Shaheed in the top 30 this week, and Khalil Shakir at number 30 to round us out. Rashid Shaheed going to the Los Angeles Rams. The only problem Olave has is he's not getting 20 targets like Jamar is, because Rashid Shaheed has been very consistent with his target share. Now, I will say this. I didn't mention this with Olave. It needs to be taken into account that they're making a quarterback change this week to Tyler Shough. So this will impact what they do. And it may impact who gets the majority of targets. Maybe he prefers Shaheed. Maybe he prefers Olave. Maybe we see an emergence of Brandon Cooks for all we know. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. We do know that the offense's upside is not that high, and that's why you can't really rank those receivers that much higher than they are ranked. Khalil Shakir at 30 to round us out. The bottom line is in this matchup. Again, I'd rather take Shakir, the consistent wide receiver one in Buffalo, over Marvin Harrison Jr., over Jordan Addison, over Troy Franklin. I would rather take this play and against the Kansas City Chiefs in what should be a very high-scoring matchup and play Khalil Shakir. His target share has been pretty consistent, around 6 to 8 targets per game. Not super high-end, but he can get in the end zone, and he plays with Josh Allen. That's the way I look at this one, and it's pretty plain and simple. So let me know what you think of the rankings in the comments below, and if you want to see the top 12 kicker rankings for this week, click on this video right here.